My name is Dawn Barton,
Yeah.
and I am a mother, a daughter, a grandmother, but I'm also an author and a speaker, and I host women's retreats, and I'm a woman who fought for her kid, which is what we're here for.
That is what we're here for, and I think, so part of the obviously, I think the goal, so to speak, for both of us really, when
Mhm.
we initially had this conversation, a couple months ago, I think, I think the purpose of it too is that a lot of people out there don't know of the Marchman Act. They don't know that it's even an option for them. So I think, part of what I think we both kind of hope to achieve through this is to, for families that may not know much about it and may not know if it has the opportunity to work is, telling a little bit of your story and Mackenzie's story, here today, kind of just to get that message out there that this can work for families.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was life-saving for us, actually, and I didn't know anything about it, so, um when you're in the situations for us, finding out about, the addiction that our daughter and son-in-law were experiencing, it kind of blindsided us.
Mhm.
So things happened really rapidly,
Yeah.
and someone just said, "You're gonna need the Marchman Act," and I said, "Okay," but I don't know where that is, so yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about, kind of what happened leading up to the Marchman Act and the need for it and, what was kind of going on with Mackenzie? Were there any red flags, things of that nature?
Red flags in the sense of
Like what actually kind of
what made us do the Marchman Act,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, we had done an intervention, and, she went to rehab, not happily. Not at all, and, about the 2nd day in, I get a call saying she's starting to talk about wanting to leave. I didn't even realize because the whole world of addiction was new to me. I didn't even realize a person could go into rehab and just leave. Like, I had no idea,
Yeah.
and I was panicked beyond belief, because she was in a different city, than where she lived, and someone had told me about it. I did a little bit of research on it, just knowing that it was something that could keep her in rehab,
Yeah.
and that's why and then we picked up the phone just saying, "Help, help."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I guess leading up to treatment too, what were some of the things that were going on that led Mackenzie to actually have to go to treatment initially?
You mean the addiction itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she was doing drugs.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah. She had become addicted to meth along with her husband, and, we found out about it, and as soon as we found out, we moved very quickly and got somebody to do an intervention. It had been a year. I didn't know that it had been. It'd been a year. They live a little bit about an hour and a half, 2 hours from us,
Yeah.
and the parents to our grandkids, and it certainly I knew it wasn't who they were. You know what I mean? Um, and I was just ready to fight. I was ready to fight. Well, my all of us were, yeah, all the family.
Yeah. Um, how was that experience of I imagine going through that as a parent, finding out that that's actually what's going on with your adult child.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sure that there are a lot of emotions that come with that.
Oh, absolutely,
Can
yeah.
you talk a little bit about that and kind of how you were feeling about, learning what was going on and ultimately, having your daughter go to treatment, for addiction?
Well, I could lie to you, but the reality was, you think about where did I do wrong? You'd like if I had just in that moment, or if I had realized, and if I had moved before, if I had, what if I had she had mentioned this, and why didn't I pick up on that? And what did I do when she was a kid that this brought us, the guilt of what did I do wrong as a parent is not, by the way, is wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but I did feel it. I absolutely felt it. And for some reason, by the grace of God, I thought to myself, I was dealing with two people. I was dealing with an addict, and I just kept envisioning my like 8-year-old little girl and fighting for her. And I was going to do anything and everything to save that girl. And like, to hell with the addict. Like I was so angry at the addict. But to me, that wasn't my daughter.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that I mean, we hear that a ton too. And, I mean, we've kind of talked a little bit about my personal experience as well. And, I mean, many people like myself too come from great families, right? That go through this. And, so, you hear stories about people that have alcoholism, for instance, it's running in the family. And then there's other people where really like, their parents were great parents.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that you've come to the realization that it wasn't your fault, you know?
I didn't just easily come to that. I did a lot of therapy. I did Al-Anon. I had a therapist going, "It isn't you," you know? It took a long time, because the blame for sure, her biological father had passed away years ago.
Mhm.
So, I so much of that I felt like, I was carrying the weight for, and
Yeah.
I did. I immediately got great therapists and Al-Anon meetings and, did all of the proactively kind of fought for me as well as her.
Yeah, yeah. Was that your just out of curiosity too, was that your first experience with, I mean, therapy, or like in this kind of a setting or?
I'd like to say
Okay,
yes.
fair enough. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay,
No, 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 no. I had lost a child many, many years ago,
okay.
and so went through a lot of therapy from that. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah. So, we talked about the guilt and the shame, and we talked about the support that you had. From a family perspective, did you have other support? Could you just talk a little bit about how you were supported throughout this process with Mackenzie?
Yeah, a ton of support. So both families, we went into and extended families went into full, like, fight for our children mode, and, um, maybe it was a little bit I was more spearheading things,
Mhm.
um then, my husband was gone a lot. So I did feel a little bit alone, and it was all happening so fast, and you feel like someone is like you're drinking from a fire hose kinda thing. There's so much to take in when you're
Yeah,
learning everything. In our case, it wasn't a slow going, thing. For us, it was real fast.
yeah,
And so I not only am I trying to understand addiction but I'm also trying to figure out that how does the process work to save a loved one,
yeah.
which, as you know, is an unbelievably complex process. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I remember talking to you on a Friday night, or Friday later in the day. I remember was, I think, the first time that we were connected. And I think that, you know, I I continue to kind of grow in this process as well and kind of try to put myself in your shoes. And thinking back on it, I can't even imagine kind of, you'd done the intervention,
Right.
Mackenzie was in treatment. You're talking to treatment facilities, you're talking to an interventionist, you're talking now to a lawyer, who you're connected to and put in touch with. I imagine it kind of feels like you are getting kind of hit from all different angles while this is going on. I mean, that's the feeling that I got. I remember when I was talking to you
Mhm.
that Friday night. You know, how did you manage that? Like, I mean, having to kind of talk to all these key people at one point, and you're being referred to this person and that person. And
Yeah.
I imagine that that's just the way I envision it, is that it feels like you're kind of just, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I will say that I remember talking to you,
Mhm.
which is weird because there was a lot I don't remember from that, heightened
Yeah.
time. And your story about what you had been through and that you had been an addict and well, I was just like, thank you. I felt for us, I'm a very faith-filled person. I felt like just God handpicked all these right people that I needed at the right time.
Mhm.
And you were a piece of that. And everybody from your firm was um, gentle and kind and loving and understanding. So in a process that is this 90 miles an hour, it was a little bit of a
Yeah.
and I think everybody in all those pieces understands what you're going through
Mhm.
and kind of holding your hand through it, even though you're making all these massive, crazy decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and obviously one of those decisions was the Marchman Act itself. I want to talk a little bit about that too. And what did you know about the Marchman Act before we talked? Did you know anything about it?
Nothing. It's just that it was something that would keep her in rehab.
Yeah.
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Had you even heard about it?
never.
And you live in Florida.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, does that surprise you that you hadn't heard of it?
It does now because I'm so passionate about it now.
Mhm.
I actually wanna, do things like this and help people to learn about it because, my daughter today, so at this time, she's, 9 months sober,
Amazing. Mhm.
and she said, "The Marchman Act saved my life." And so I wish anyone who is battling with all this knew about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Me too.
Mhm.
It's kind of part of the purpose of this, and Florida is really unique, as we've talked about, in that no states really have anything quite like this, like the Marchman Act law. Um, we talk to a lot of families who say, "I wish this existed in my state." The reality is, as we talked about too, you don't have to be from Florida to utilize the Marchman Act. So there are a lot of families that will kind of strategize to bring their loved ones
Bring 'em.
here to Florida. Um, and that's one of the things also that I'm hoping to get the message out a little bit as well. There are other states that this kind of a law has been proposed, and it hasn't been very well received. Um, I will just mention too that I talked to some state senators' offices in Pennsylvania where there's a bill that's being proposed that looks like the Marchman Act, and it has failed several times already. Um, and what I've been told, there's a question coming at the end, by
Yeah.
the way, but what I've been told from the government in Pennsylvania, that there is a kind of belief that involuntary treatment doesn't work, and really, quite honestly, that they don't even believe really that. I'm not saying everybody, but it's just kind of an innate feeling, I think, that you kind of get that even treatment for addiction and mental health doesn't work. What would you say to those government officials if they were in the room with us, right?
So as you're saying it, I'm smiling because I had this vision of the day we did the intervention and her screaming at me. Um, and nothing was nice. But then the last vision was her leaning out of this truck as she's leaving for the intervention, flipping me off with both hands, saying, "F you, mom." And I was like, okay. So somebody once said to me, say, "I'm so glad she was so willing to go." And I said, "There was nothing that willing about it." And she fought so hard for, I don't know, 6 weeks in maybe, trying to, like, legally get out, trying to and she laughs about it now, so I'm not sharing anything she wouldn't say.
Sure.
And she is the first one to say, "The Marchman Act saved my life." Because remember, it's that crazy addict. That was not my daughter. That was the crazy addict fighting, and it took her coming through detox and getting things off, and then, and I mean, it's a different conversation, but I think treatment needs to be probably a lot more than 90 days and 120 days in our case, and then we did 90 days of sober living, but, and now a sober coach. So,
Mhm, mhm.
it's such a longer process. You can't expect somebody who's been through that and the addiction and what it does to the brain and the body to just go to something real quick and then it's just done.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That could be I couldn't agree with you more on that. I mean, even in this is about Mackenzie, but I would just say from my perspective also, the statistics show that the longer somebody is in treatment for, there's a higher likelihood of them actually staying sober.
Right.
Obviously, not every family has that ability, and especially nowadays with, insurance coverage not, being great all the times in this field. But to that point, yeah, it's actually really an ongoing. And you mentioned the sober coach
Mhm.
is something that Mackenzie, I believe, is
Yeah.
engaged with now.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm like, there's somebody who's gonna talk to her every single day and help,
Yeah,
keeps her on track and they become great friends and it's, just wonderful,
yeah, yeah.
but helps her a lot.
Mhm. Was the Marchman Act process intimidating for you at all?
So, no, because you guys kind of do it, to be honest with you.
Mhm. But
It
it's
was
just
really
yeah.
me saying yes, but then if I'm being honest, the hardest part of it was you sent paperwork that I had to fill out and say what was going on, and that to this day, I remember, I had to get it faxed to you, I think, And so I had to go to UPS store to do it, and because I don't have a fax anymore, and I think that's what the story was, or I was overnighting it to or something. Yeah, I had to go to the UPS store, and I was shaking so much just signing my name that I was gonna do this legal thing
Yeah.
against my daughter, and then I just had to get that out of my head that I'm doing this legal thing against this addict because I want that gone because I want my daughter, like, I want her fiercely. But I was crying, God, sorry. The guy, he looked at it and he saw, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm so sorry. My brother was an addict." And he said, "And he's good now."
Wow.
So I just felt like that again, that just one of those moments where you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was probably the hardest, thing, and then she fought the Marchman Act,
Yeah.
um, which is just a joy. So,
That unfortunately happens. Yeah.
but and she kind of now we laugh about those kind of things today, but boy, it wasn't laughable at the time because I just kept thinking, if you would take all that energy
Yeah.
of that fight and put that fight into sobriety, which ended up being what happened,
Yeah.
because she did finally just surrender to all of it, and she's just fierce and magnificent and incredible, and just it's so good to be on the other side of it. But boy, it wasn't pretty in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we can laugh about it now. I mean, you brought up laugh,
yeah, we laugh about it now.
and it's almost like some people might not understand that.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like that they're that and we say kind of in our group, like, we're not a glum lot. Like, right, we
yeah,
made it to the other side
yeah.
of this, so it gives us the ability to laugh about it now. But some people might see that and say, like, how could you laugh about these things? But when
It's
things are
yeah.
going well,
You're so glad that you're here, for one. There's so much joy in sobriety, right?
yeah,
To be in the other side of it from something I remember thinking in a moment, there is no way we will come we might get a little better, but I could not fathom or wrap my head around the goodness to the level that we're at today.
yeah,
Like, it's so good
yeah. It
that
hasn't been that long.
no, it
I
hasn't.
mean, to think that things have turned
Yeah.
around that drastically in that short of a period of time,
Yeah.
I could relate to that
Yeah.
too, you
Yeah.
know? So, oh, just a little bit about so we did kinda talk about it, sorry if I'm stalling a little bit, I know you can probably edit this, we'll edit. Um, one of the things so when families call us typically, um, we hear probably the thing that we hear most is once families hear about the Marchman Act, um, and in some cases, law enforcement, is involved in the Marchman Act. For instance, as you know, that
It was for us, yeah.
yeah, right,
Mhm.
right. So, if uh, when we hear from families, oftentimes they'll say, "I can't take this step because my loved one, whether it be my son, my daughter, sometimes it's a parent, unfortunately, sometimes it's a brother or a sister,
Mhm.
sometimes it's a friend. You don't have to be family to utilize this." And we have had friends that have utilized it. But what we hear most often is, "They're going to hate me forever."
Mm,
Um, I can never say to a family that that's not true
yeah,
because I don't know.
yeah,
You know what I mean? The reality is I don't know. But what we typically see is that most of the time that does not end up being the case. And obviously that hasn't been the case in
right.
your shoes. But to the family that thinks as they're sitting in that position about to make that decision,
Mhm.
either I should or I shouldn't do this. What would you say to that family that feels like their loved one's going to hate them forever if they take this step?
So, I'm gonna take it back one little step in that when I found out she was wanting to leave,
Mhm.
I was so scared of her leaving the facility, and truly, I didn't know where she was mentally, emotionally. I didn't so I had these visions of her going onto the streets and dying.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm and I that scared me more, um, and I said to myself, "I don't care if she hates me the rest of her life. If she never speaks to me again, if she is clean and she is sober and she has a life, I'm I'm okay. I can carry that she would hate me as long as she's okay. Like, I love her that much."
Yeah.
And so sorry. It's so emotional to take you back to the heaviness of how hard those decisions were and scary those decisions were, and sitting with my husband and us making, those calls, And honestly, the Marchman Act for us, I think it happened over a weekend. It was a Sunday. We had to do like an emergency thing.
Yep.
And the re that and I laugh we laugh about this, and she laughs about this now too. She left, rehab and went across the street to the library and just sat there.
I remember that.
And so they had
Yeah.
to cover so she never actually did anything, but the fear of not knowing what would happen,
Yeah.
and then they had went and got her and brought her back,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she laughs about it now, and she it's just but it wasn't her. That woman wasn't her.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, it's a good transition. But how soon would you say after the Marchman Act, went through, did you start to see some of the old signs of Mackenzie again? Like,
Oh gosh, yeah. She was 6 weeks in, and I had to go, and meet with her because my parents were incredibly sick. So this isn't something that normally happens, but I ended up meeting with her at the rehab,
mhm.
and when she well, first, let me just say, I hadn't seen her probably in 10 months when we did the intervention. So when I saw her when we walked in the house, m my heart shattered that that was her. And then, 6 weeks later, when she I remember it's like it was yesterday, she came around a corner, and she was the most vibrant, beautiful human I'd ever seen in my life. And then, we sat on the porch and talked because I was telling her her grandparents were ill,
Yeah.
real sick, and I didn't think they would live for when she got out, and they actually are still doing great, but, but she when we sat and talked, I was like, "There you are."
Yeah.
Like, this is what I fought for, that woman right there.
Mhm.
Now, did we still have plenty of struggles after that?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because it isn't this she has told me sobriety isn't linear, it's like this. So, we still have had ups and downs, not in the sense of her using, but in the sense of the emotional regulation. I think so much more of the battle that people don't I think when people say to me, "How's Mackenzie doing?" They're like, "Is Mackenzie doing drugs?"
Right.
And the reality is it's the emotional regulation and learning how to live in everyday life. It's not that. So I think they ask the wrong questions and understand the wrong things and the battles they go through. So having the safety net of the Marchman Act. So for us, and she was 120 days in rehab.
Mhm.
And then she was in such, she was in this really great spot. And I said she was going to go to sober living. We're decide on sober living. And she was in agreement.
Yeah.
And she said, because again, we were in a really good spot at that moment. And I said, "Do you wanna, re-up the Marchman Act?" And she's like, "I don't care. That's fine. You can redo it." And I was kinda like, "Okay, well, we'll redo it." And thank goodness we did because we had stuff happen about a week later.
Yeah.
Her husband came back from his rehab and didn't go in sober living. She wanted out.
Mhm.
And had she gotten out at that point versus 90 days later, the woman she was 90 days later was day and night for the woman she was then. Not because she wasn't sober, she was, but she was learning how to just cope with life and emotion and feelings and regulation of all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when they say that once we get sober, the greatest part about that is we get to feel our feelings again, and
Yeah.
we're
Everybody still
Spartans
gets
with
those
those
feelings,
things.
yeah.
Have to feel our feelings again, and it is hard to cope with that. I can relate to that as well. Yeah, that is nowadays, and I'll just share with you. It's like um, my wife will sometimes say to me, like she'll look at me and she'll say, "Where did you go?" Right,
Mm.
and because there's moments where um, I've been sober for a few years now, but, it's still, I have to go back to the basics sometimes, and still do the routine that I
Yeah.
did when I was in early recovery,
Mhm.
and make sure that, like, those things that worked for me
Right.
before, because what the mind tells you oftentimes when you're in, like, Mackenzie's shoes, I'm sure, is, that well, now things are better. Maybe I don't need to do the things that were working for me for so long. I mean, your mind kind of plays tricks on you that way. And thankfully, I had some great people early on that would tell me, like, you have to drown out that noise in your mind that's telling you that you don't need to keep doing the things that you were doing, whether it be going to support meetings, whether it be working with a sober coach. Those things are things that you really need to continue to do throughout life, which I have to tell you now is like it's great. I love it because
Yes.
um, like you told me, Mackenzie's working now. Um,
You're with her.
Yeah, she's
Yeah.
doing well,
So
and the reality is that she can do anything that she wants, now, like, in
yeah,
recovery.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
uh,
and hearing from, to hear her share, I mean, it's healing for all of us because it's so difficult to go through it. It's so difficult on not just the addict, but on the entire family. And to even hear her share, "Yeah, I was having a bad couple of days." Part of me is like, "No, no, 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 I don't wanna hear it," but you're so scared to hear that, but she's so equipped to know what to do in that now, and I think that's part of it, that you wanna people think you send them to a 30-day rehab, but they don't learn any of those kind of coping mechanisms. That's what I think takes so long
right.
and, uh, why it's so important that we did extend Marchman Act, and she did. And I just wanna circle back and say, there wasn't anything about doing the Marchman Act that was easy emotionally. That is a really scary and tough call to make,
Mhm.
and, I was the only one having to make it because Lana was in another state that didn't have Marchman Act,
Sure.
and,
Texas, right?
Texas,
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
and so it was all me, my husband's her stepdad, it was and so I had to truly make the decision, was I okay with her? If I and it's silly now because the reality is of them hating you forever, the chances of that happening are so, 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 so small,
Yeah,
but you don't think that way at the time, you're really scared,
sure.
um, and I'm so glad that I cared more about her sobriety than I cared about her hating me.
Mhm, mhm.
I don't know why I was wise in that particular moment, but I was.
No.
But not always.
Yeah, and I think that's something greater than us, I think, too, that, kind of I mean, I really do. You said it earlier on, too. I do think that, um, when you're in this circumstance, people put, or I'm sorry, people are put into your life that,
Yeah.
I think there's a greater reason for it. I think that there's a reason why you and I, kind of reconnected
Uh,
after the Marchman Act because, you and I had a long talk
yeah.
and, about a lot of things, and, but I think what was most important out of that too is knowing I remember what you said to me of like, I wanna get the word out there. I want to make this, like, a mission of mine to make sure that families understand
Right.
that they have to have this option, you know?
I'm so unbelievably passionate about I knew that I don't think, any hardship we go through should be wasted, right? I think we should use it for the next person behind us and to help others. But I also knew that I wasn't called to work frontline with addiction. Um, but I have not in talking to friends, in talking on social media and all of these different kinds of things, so few people know about the Marchman Act. I'm like, it is literally a life-saving tool.
Mhm.
And right there for in Florida, or bring your people to, your loved one to Florida and put it into place so that they can get well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna shout from the rooftops about it and just let people know about the Marchman Act.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I will.
You're doing that.
I hope so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're definitely doing that. Um, I think we pretty much I do there's a few final questions I wanna ask, and then I also wanna give you the opportunity to say I mean, I know we've covered a good amount of ground too, but obviously this is, an opportunity for you to kinda get the message out there, but, oh, well, this is a good question that I might ask. What advice do you think Mackenzie would give to somebody in her shoes?
That's
I this is, like, hypothetical, but you know her, she's your daughter, so you know her well enough probably to say a good educated guess on that, of what she would say to someone who's in that position where they can't see that they need the help, which happens so often, right?
Well, I don't think any addict is in a position to see that they need help. Generally speaking, right? I mean, that you're not working with your full mind.
Yeah, it
So,
depends, it varies, I mean, I could some do, some hit that rock bottom, and they say,
and I need help.
"I
Okay.
I need it," but
Gotcha.
but more often than not, probably there's resistance,
Yeah.
uh,
I see what
yeah,
you're saying there.
yeah.
So,
But what would she say to that person that's in her shoes that definitely cannot see that they need to be in treatment or receiving, care of
Yeah.
substance use.
First, she's been so at 120 days, she went public on social media that she was clean, and by the grace of God, her family swept in and saved them, and
Yeah.
so I've loved that, um, so she feels as passionately as I do about taking shame out of this,
Yeah.
that the more we talk about it, the more we help people,
Mm.
and so I love that about her. She, twice has said to me the Marchman Act saved her life, but we did just really recently have a conversation. She was like, "Well, I didn't like being away from the kids that long." But then I spoke to her sober coach, and she said, "Oh, she would agree 100% that this is the greatest thing ever." And so I do think she would say, to a family, if they're not in a good place and they're trying to get out because going into rehab is hard, right?
Yeah.
That give them this safety net, and it doesn't feel like a safety net. It feels like chains to them,
Mm.
I think, in the beginning. But what it actually is a soft place to fall in a safety net. And I don't think we think of it that way.
Yeah.
And I think she would say that she is passionate about helping people. She's passionate about the 12-step program, and about getting better. She's um, and about working through stuff, talking through stuff,
Mhm.
communication at a whole different level now, it's beautiful. So I love the woman that I'm seeing, come out of this. She's the same woman that fought me on the stupid Marchman Act, but she now has taken that and it has twisted into saving the world in a sense.
This is just awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome to hear. I think really kind of the final question, really that I have for you is, you know, a lot of families that are in the position that you were in, and you've kind of answered this question, but I want to give you kind of an opportunity to elaborate on it. Um, they lack hope, right? And many families that come to us, your circumstance is a little bit unique in this from the standpoint of you didn't really know the full extent for a while of what was going on. We have a lot of families who um, their loved ones have been sometimes to 30 plus treatment centers, right? And they've never um, tried something like the Marchman Act. And the cycle that we see oftentimes is their loved one will go in the door. They may complete, for instance, higher levels of care, things like detox, residential, partial hospitalization. And what happens a lot of the time is once they get like that recommendation for sober living or intensive outpatient or outpatient care, that tends to be oftentimes when that cycle repeats, where it's their loved one says, "Thanks, I got this, I'm good." And we've seen that in some circumstances happen, like I said, 30 plus times. That's not unusual for us. Hear that. And some of those families had never tried anything like the Marchman Act. So they're hopeless, right? Because they've tried everything else except this. Um, and so my question for you is, with that kind of in mind, um, what does hope like or look like? Sorry, what does hope look like to you now? Now that you're on the other side of it, and maybe putting yourself in that family's shoes that's really tried everything else, and now they're considering, should we do the Marchman Act? Should we maybe just set firm boundaries? Um, I want to give you the opportunity. I guess maybe I'll start with what does hope look like to you now?
I'm gonna take it back to the moment that I had hope
Mhm.
with the Marchman Act.
Mhm.
So she was probably 3 weeks, she was about to get out of treatment in 3 weeks, and we had the family day. And just on a fluke, one of the women from Sober Living came in, and she was lovely, beautiful, just this lovely young late 20s woman. And, she spoke to the group, and she talked about that her parents had put her in rehab there for 4 months, and then Marchman acted her several, I think 3 times. Um, so she was just finishing out almost a year in sober living and getting her own place and, like, this incredible, beautiful, wonderful life. But just I said I asked her questions. I said, "Were you mad about the Marchman Act?" She was like, "Yeah, furious, absolutely." She goes, "But it was the smartest thing they ever did." And so, I had been carrying so much of that feeling bad about because I was thinking about doing it again and so scared to do it again, and there's that beautiful young woman, and then later to find out that that woman was so bad when she came in. She had meth psychosis so bad they had to send her away to get her stabilized before bringing her back to even have treatment. Like, to where she was to that, it gave me hope of what the beauty at the end of it was like. And also, the Marchman Act took the I don't know how else to say this, it takes the pressure off the parents of setting the boundary because the boundary is set. And you can I think a lot of times we're a little weak when it comes to the ones we love. So setting the boundaries, and not just that, but they know how to manipulate you like nobody else, right? They're master manipulators.
Common trait.
Yeah, and so it took all of that away, and it left it with her in the facility doing the work and me, uh, fighting for the best I could on the outside.
It takes so much courage. I admire you so much, for what you did because, um, it's a huge step. It does not go overlooked in my eyes, like, what it must take, the courage that it must take to actually take that step to help your loved one. Something I think about really often, and especially with you, and how strong a voice you have now.
Yeah.
It's just, it's really inspiring for me,
Thank
to
you.
listen to you.
I wanna say this,
Mhm,
I'm gonna interrupt you,
mhm,
and I'm gonna say this because my circumstance was different in that we found out and we moved very quickly. That is not the case for a lot of people. They've been living with it, and it's been slow and slow and slow because my daughter and son-in-law had family around them
mhm,
that kind of knew what was going on, and I remember being so angry when I found out that why didn't everyone move on this? Why didn't people help them? Or why didn't anyone tell me? And a friend of mine said this. She said, do you know the story about the frog in the pot? Like, if you put a frog in a pot in normal lukewarm water and you turn the heat up slowly, it'll stay there and just die.
mhm.
You put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out. She said, you got there when the water was boiling. They've been there since the water was room temperature.
Wow. Mm,
And it's so different. So, my hope and my prayer is that those that are in that thing that it's been slow going, just to stop and take that, because oh my gosh, the destruction that it does emotionally and, mentally, and just the the love you have for your people. It's so deep and so profound, and the thought of them hating you, you wouldn't let it have gotten to where it was if you weren't this incredible loving person because you didn't wanna hurt them. You were so scared that by sending them to, doing a Marchman Act, sending them to treatment, that they were gonna be mad at you.
yeah.
Um, and I know it sounds so silly when you say it like that, but it is big and it's a reality, and you're scared, and then I just hope that even if they've been in the lukewarm water,
Mhm.
that they make the moves, the dramatic moves
Yeah,
to save them.
yeah. Me too. Um, Amazing. I mean, is there anything that you'd like to add that you feel like we haven't covered?
Mm-mm. No, I do fully acknowledge that my story is a little different and that I got to move very rapidly. I found out we moved fast. And my heart breaks for those that have been in it a long time when things seem hopeless and scary. And maybe learning about the Marchman Act will give them hope, that there's something that takes it off of them to be able to do.